Following on from the Renaissance, our next topic is going to be the Voyages of Discovery. The map you can see on this slide, the Mappa Mundi, which you can see in Hereford Cathedral, shows you the extent of medieval knowledge about the world in 1300. The point is the lack of oceans. If you look, the Mediterranean Sea is that T-shaped thing at the bottom, but where's the Atlantic, where's the Indian, where's the Pacific Ocean? They simply aren't there. Medieval people, it seems, weren't interested in them. You'd think, therefore, that people, merchants, adventurers, Renaissance men would be very interested in filling in the gaps in the maps, but they were held back by whatever reason. One of them would be fear. When you look at many medieval maps, they are decorated with the fantastic monsters capable of devouring whole ships that people would encounter. No wonder they weren't particularly keen on venturing abroad. During the Renaissance topic, you came across the idea of a Renaissance man, the person who was meant to be interested in basically everything, from science as known at the time, mathematics, geography, animals, art, sculpture, the lot. Now, this new spirit of inquisitive inquiry was one of the big motivating forces for the Voyage of Discovery. As it says in the last line on this PowerPoint, the curiosity ignited by the Renaissance resulted in men wanting to know what, if anything, lay over the horizon. One of the great Renaissance men was Prince Henry of Portugal. His mother was actually the sister of King Henry IV of England. Anyway, he was fascinated by Africa because at the age of 21 he took part in a military expedition to capture the port of Ceuta, which is in Morocco, and was the gateway to Africa. And for the rest of his life, for the next 40 odd years, he spent his whole fortune sponsoring sailors with orders to go venture forth and sail down the coast of Africa and come back with accurate maps and charts with which Portugal could build an empire. Fact is as well that three new inventions, great inventions, at this time in history also enabled the Voyage of Discovery to take place. The first one you could actually see on the previous slide, which is simply a triangular sail. An idea which came from the Arabs. Now, lateen sail is capable of sailing into the wind. Before that, the only way to go into the wind was basically with banks of oars in a rowed ship. And the trouble is, if you've got lots of banks of oars, you've got loads and loads of people to feed, and crossing the Atlantic is simply not feasible. The second one was the compass. The magnetised needle was first invented, as far as Europe was concerned, about 1190, and came into general use, which meant you could find out where you were when you were out of sight of land. And lastly, the cannon was a tremendously important invention, and for that matter personal firearms, because these gave Europeans a big advantage when it came to encountering civilizations that did not have that technology. And we see that in particular when the Portuguese get to India and they use their cannons to destroy their enemies. So I'm going to set you a couple of tasks to do. Questions 1 and 2. First of all, look at what the medieval attitude to exploration was and why people didn't seem too interested in setting out across the Atlantic to find out what was on the other side of it. And on question 2, the new technology that had been invented and what part that played. The information for that, of course, on the previous slide. The third task I want you to do this week is to look at some of the very, very colourful and interesting and often ruthless, cruel and vile people who were the key explorers, some of the most famous people in history. I'd like to find out some more about who these people are. And so I'd like you to find out about the 5 people at the bottom: Bartholomew Diaz, who was Portuguese; Christopher Columbus, who was Italian; Vasco da Gama, who was from Portugal; Ferdinand Magellan, who was Spanish, and finally John Cabot, who was another Italian. Find out who they were and write me a paragraph about each, please. Thank you. The question which has fascinated historians is, of course, the motives for setting out. Why did these explorers set out on voyages that seemed suicidal folly to many people at the time, and certainly had not been possible 100 years before they lived? So if you have a look at these, I've got four key points about reasons why they set out. In some ways, religion was a very, very important cause, and the idea of spreading Christianity, and in particular countering the power of the Muslim world, was a key motivation. Secondly, of course, greed for money, for gold in particular, for the wealth that could be brought back from expeditions. That certainly was a big part as well. Third one, you need to do a bit of research into this, that since the rise of the Muslim Empire, the trade routes to India and to China had been closed off to Europeans, and so in many ways finding new routes to the Far East was a big motivation for people setting out. And finally, as we've already written about, the improved technology. These technologies allowed people to set out and with confidence that they wouldn't all die within 2 weeks. And your final task. I'd like you to choose one particular voyage of discovery, in other words, a combination of an explorer and an expedition they made, and I want you to study this in greater depth, and as you can see I've given you 3 to choose from. One was Bartholomew Diaz's discovery of the Cape of Good Hope in 1486. Second one, the very famous expedition of Christopher Columbus, which discovered the New World, the Indies, in 1492. And thirdly, Magellan's circumnavigation of the globe of 1519 to 1522. Choose one of those and find out more about it and write me an essay on it, please. Thank you. Final task on the final slide is to look at the results of these voyages of discovery. The Spanish and the Portuguese were the first empires first European countries to build up big empires abroad, and they ushered in this age of imperialism. Now I want you to look at the results of this in terms of the places that were colonised, the places that were conquered, the places that were added to those empires. What effect did that have on them? Okay, on the places that had been conquered and colonised, and in return, what was the effect on Europe of seeing the Spanish and the Portuguese build these empires?